Is Die Rise a good map? No. While I loved Transit and found myself surprised at how much detail the map had within it, how much passion it had, and even if it was a bit rough around the edges, Die Rise does in fact suck, like everyone says. But we're still going to look at why. There are two areas that are open enough to trade in: the upside down room adjacent to the box and the Buddha room. The Buddha room and the hallway with a door just before the stairs down in the sweatshop are the only two feasible camping spots, and even then fairly dangerous due to short sight lines. The floor underneath the spawn room, the nav card table area, and the entire floor beneath the dragon are serviceable trading spots, but it's easy to get cut off due to spawning. This means about 80% of the map is what is considered a dead zone. The hallways are too tight for the collision of zombies, and it makes for too many areas where one or two zombies spawning ahead cuts you off, making you stop to kill them, which allows zombies to catch up and down you. In particular, it's mentioned at the start of this series that the sweatshop is a dead zone, as one of three examples of one. The sewing tables are too sporadic and too close together to stay in that area, and the other portions don't fare any better, all being about one or two people wide hallways that easily pin a player if zombies spawn in front of them. Any of the more open areas, like the trample steam floors or the dragon rooftop, are limited by zombie spawns breaking up the open space, which kills any training possibility. Sure, the Buddha room is a training spot. Sure, the player can somewhat reliably run through the entire floor underneath the dragon rooftop as a loop for training, but that is two very small examples in the entire map of areas to play in, which is abysmal map design. Spawning is poor. There are several ground spots where zombies can erupt that ruin training spots, and every side nook and cranny where someone could hole up and camp has a window or a hole for zombies to drop right next to the player, effectively ruining that area for any purpose. Where in many maps this is at least reasonable, as there's either loose dirt around or the map takes predominantly outside, this map is a skyscraper. So please, by all means, explain to me why I'm seeing zombies climb up through the floors. The placement of nearly all spawns are this awkward. Zombies have windows by nearly every available camping spot, and there's no decent camping spots that have elongated sight lines to mitigate the assault. Even in the Buddha room, there's a large hallway seemingly for camping, and a secondary spot on the balcony, but the former has zombies drop down behind the player, ruining the entire point of the side area and simply making it a death trap. And the latter has a window right next to it, ruining it as well. Countless cases of poor spawning akin to these kill most of the map's playability, especially if playing on a group, which you have to in order to complete the Easter egg. The map flow is atrocious. It is perhaps the worst map design I've ever seen. Traversing this map is akin to a slide. For every new area you go to, you must go through the entire map to return back to the spot you just left. There is no way to return to a previous part of the slide. You have to keep sliding down the whole thing, then climb back up to the top to get to the previous part. This map functions the same way. Once you leave the spawn area, including the trample steam floor, you cannot get back to that area until you jump back from the radio tower on the dragon rooftop. You have to go down to the Buddha room, to the sweatshop, then to the roof, to then go back. Even within parts of each section, there's evidence of this one-way slide style of terrible flow. For example, in the elevator shaft and on the dragon rooftop. This hinders the map flow to a tedious pace, as moving to a desired area requires moving through the entire map in one direction, instead of simply moving backward. While this problem can be offset slightly by the trample steam, as it can throw the player across certain gaps, since it's only a one per player placement, it only offsets one of several singular direction map progressions. Additionally, by having elevators on a timer, even with the key, which is so poorly implemented that most of the Die Rise player base probably forgot it existed, And even with the knife the machine or jump on top of the elevator to move it theory, which I have never had confirmed or denied, it still represents a fundamental flow problem. With the already horrendous flow of the map and its one direction system, having elevators that you have to wait on to progress forward or around the same level grinds every bit of movement and momentum to a level to a halt. The flow of the map has to stop while the player pauses and sits, waiting for the elevator to chug up or down, stifling the gameplay and forcing everything to stop until the player can use the elevator to move to where they need it to, then resume. It's a terrible system, and it's the final nail in the coffin for the map's poor flow. Finally, any sense of progression in the map is completely broken. While a successful zombies map has a sense of building up a player's resources, much like any RPG, this map lacks any of that build-up. The most logical first step of the players on the map is to try and get power on, which requires the party to fall down the elevator, usually. However, from there the party is immediately greeted with the power switch, the bank, the fridge, and 2 out of the 7 elevators. As each of the elevators has a random perk in it, in 2 groups, i.e. Quick Revive, Who's Who, and Speed Cola are all in one building, and Juggernog, Double Tap, Mule Kick, and Pack-a-Punch are all in the other. This means that usually Juggernog is one of the 2 perks available immediately, at about 50% chance that it's in one of the 2 by the power switch. Having randomized perks is also always a hassle, but nothing new, as World at War Zombies maps had randomized perks as well. The biggest problem with all of this is that within the first round, unless the player chooses to ignore the bank or loses the coin toss, the game's progression is mostly finished. The journey from easily downable, barely any weapons, to perks, weapons, and points, all reduced to roughly the first 2 or 3 minutes in the map. Having everything so front-loaded hurts the map's design and entertainment, and cuts down the playability as it's so fast to set up that there's nothing left to do. Even the Wonder Weapon has all its parts either just by the power switch or in the floor right below it. Once you exit the sweatshop, you're nearly completely set up, only needing to grab a Trample Steam, Speed Cola, and Pack-a-Punch if it wasn't one of the 2 starting elevators. And it's only the first couple of rounds, if not the first round. In addition, where design can come into play with how a map is opened and explored, giving players the perks they need, having everything devoted to a random elevator shaft makes it harder to do the same thing, doubly considering the perks are random. The skybox on the map is beautiful. It's a nice break from the overcast storm of Nuketown, Transit, Mob of the Dead, Origins, Call of the Dead, and Shi No Numa. The map is fairly bright, so the player sees a wide array of colors in the sky, as well as the full moon. Debris from the moon rockets periodically falls, showing meteors burning through the sky, which is, if nothing else, simply cool. The main centerpiece of the dragon and the rooftop shares a good contrast to the bleak, overturned skyscraper beside it. However, the interior of the sweatshop is terrible in this category. While I understand that the sweatshop is supposed to be a sweatshop, there's a certain level of suspension of disbelief to the area that allows for accuracy to be overridden by gameplay necessity. This is the same reason why Mob of the Dead was successful while Voyage of Despair was not. A map needs to be playable in order to be good, and if the location does not suit the gameplay loop of Call of Duty Zombies, then the accuracy of the location has to be sacrificed for the sake of the map's quality. The sweatshop, and by extension the second floor of the Dragon rooftop, as they are stylized similarly, I assume is an accurate portrayal of a poor Chinese building and sweatshop, but its design is extremely bland and repetitive. The sweatshop is a bunch of plastic tables, the second floor being an array of boxes which are supposed to be beds. The entire area is a maze to traverse, not just because the hallways are narrow, but because every room in the building looks the exact same and is decorated the exact same, with the same box cages everywhere. The only distinguished areas are the rooms with the Sliquifier table and the couch with the mannequin foot. This problem persists throughout the map to the upside-down rooms with the box and the rooms underneath the rooftop with the dragon. In both areas, the color scheme and decoration are similar, though significantly more so with the second floor of the dragon building. The idea is there of running in a ruined building, but the mystery box room and adjacent rooms have so little inside them besides generic ruined walls and floors that it's hard to distinguish anything about them. I personally forget that there's an entire training room in the mystery box in that area a lot of the time, as it's that forgettable running past it to the Buddha room. The washed out color palette works for a rundown, roach-infested ruins of collapsed skyscrapers teeming with dead, but it does also keep the map feeling bland and dull for the areas it's used in. This is offset by varieties in colors for a couple different areas, but the overall scheme brings down several areas in terms of likability. The Buddha room has a stark contrast, however, as the room is prevalent in brighter reds contrasting the washed out tones of the rest of the map, and the use of the underside of stairways for ramps shows that the idea of upside-down map gameplay is feasible and enjoyable, but was not fleshed out enough for more success than in this room and seldom else. While it is nice that they attempted something new with the zombie models, giving them some armor as if military personnel, which therefore give them extra health, the other zombie models are wearing very basic clothes. While I understand, yes, it's a bunch of sweatshop workers, it further exacerbates the issue of a bland map. There's not a whole lot of different models either, usually one of 3, including the military personnel. While the first 2 or 3 steps are fairly straightforward and intuitive, the Easter egg as a whole lacks any rhyme or reason for the steps that are required. After all the golden symbols are lit up, there's a particular lack of sensibility to why the next step occurs and how you would naturally proceed to figure out the next step. Furthermore, the final step of the Easter egg, while thematic and interesting in concept, is entirely reliant on a zombies player knowing Mandarin, otherwise needing a guide. I enjoy the idea of using these tiles, but the step should have had easier to notice locations and a smaller set of spawn locations, easing the tediousness of hunting them all down. Both sides of the Easter egg, Maxis and Richtofen, aren't particularly exciting to do. The most interesting part of both of them is moving a small ball from the Dragon's Mouth to a lion statue and spawn, and if playing for Maxis, then bouncing it around a few trample steams. The map has barely any indication of change with the Easter egg steps either. Quotes are oftentimes hard to hear in gameplay, and visual indicators are often appreciated, but the map's only visual indicator is the dragon sparking for a completed step, and the radio tower glowing if the Easter egg is completed. While the radio tower at least looks cool, it's entirely easy to miss the dragon's changes, especially during any gameplay when the player is more focused on the zombies. The steps themselves involve little besides standing in a few different locations, and despite the simplicity behind it, the Easter egg requires 4 players, though Richtofen only requires 2. The Easter egg doesn't have any major impact on the map itself. Besides hearing Maxis pester you from the reception and spawn during the opening round, there's very little that the Easter egg connects to the map, leaving the Easter egg as entirely a side event to the map itself. While this isn't inherently bad, there's nothing encouraging the player to continue the Easter egg or engage in it, and no incentive to complete it. Easter eggs are originally just that, small side quests that are hidden away from normal gameplay, but by Call of the Dead, each map has a main quest besides surviving higher rounds, and to move back from that to a side quest that's hidden tightly away hinders the experience in trying to beat a map. Sure, you get a reward, all the perks on the map, but not permanently. The second you go down, it's back to the standard 4, which makes the hassle for it not particularly worth it. Not to mention, there's only 6 perks on the map, and since no one particularly cares for Who's Who or Mule Kick, it's really not any reward at all. The Victus storyline isn't the greatest, no one denies that. Whether you personally enjoy more than dislike the characters in contrast to most others in the fanbase hating them, besides Misty, you know why, the main plot point for their character story is a set of polarization devices that will open Agartha for whomever they side with. But the reasoning for this is rather vague. A power pylon, a radio tower, and a rock chute with an execution device? Why these objects, what they do to open Agartha, I could never tell you. And this creates a problem where story investment is already limited, as there's not much information to go off of. If it were use of high capacity electrical devices in key locations or something, the radio tower would make sense. But in Buried, the machinery is said to be the device, yet we use a gallows or a guillotine to power it. This lack of clarity hinders the investment in the Easter egg in the map, and doesn't lend any reason why the radio tower should be focused on, especially considering all progress for the Easter egg is shown on the dragon signs instead. This only exacerbates the issue of nonsensical steps. Why do these symbols matter? Why do I need this ball? What is it? Why is it important? Why do I need a ballistic knife in a specific room of the map? Why do I need to make the balls spin? Why remove the balls from the dragon and move them to the lion statue to then immediately put them back into the dragon mouth? What does any of the previous steps have to do with electrifying a radio tower in a certain order? Why can Richtofen now teleport the group anywhere he wants and revive them from the dead? Why doesn't he use that beyond the intro cutscene for the map? Lots of questions, yet the map gives no answers. There's not an insane amount of new weapons or traps in this map. In fact, there are exactly 0 traps in this map, not counting deciding to stand between an elevator and a concrete ceiling. There is a new perk, and while yes, it isn't preferred, it still beats a guaranteed game over. However, the introduction of the trample steam serves as a mobile trap for the players, and has been a favorite ever since. Its use is amplified on the map, where, while limited, it helps mitigate the issues of the map flow, and is infinite damage as long as it lasts. There are 3 new weapons introduced within the map, that being the AN-94, the SVUAS, and the PDW. All interestingly enough wall weapons. Each of these weapons are fantastic additions to the Zombies game mode. The SVUAS has individually weak shots, but a semi-auto sniper has fantastic potential for camping situations, and works especially well with permaperks. The PDW is a great choice for high ammo capacity, and is easier to get to for resupplying ammo. The AN-94 is perhaps the best wall weapon ever created by Treyarch, offering high damage, rate of fire, and handling, outclassing nearly every other gun in the Zombies game mode. The Wonder Weapon, the Sliquifier, is fantastic. By numbers alone, it's one of the best Wonder Weapons, especially pre-patch. The design is also exciting to look at, and captures the attention well. Made of odd propellant, a collection of wires and discs, and a foot, the design is perfect for a cobbled-together look, and is, until the KT-4, entirely unique in its functionality. It shoots lean! But seriously, the idea of a gun that fires globs that slide players and zombies around and explodes crowds of zombies on impact is both hilarious and captivating. Why does it do this? How does it work? What is it firing? Questions that aren't answered but don't need to be. The inherent silliness yet effectiveness is one of the primary tenets to the zombies experience for any equipment. And this Wonder Weapon does it perfectly, allowing for at least one person to always enjoy themselves while playing the map. There should have been a second perk introduced, or reintroduced to the map, that being PhD Flopper. Delegated to a troll moment in the cargo elevator fall, its importance in such a vertically emphasized map would have been pivotal to helping the experience. It can't have been the issue of not knowing what to do if a player falls off the side of the map either. Have them land on the city street, the area acting like Moon's Area 51 until they get on an elevator to ride back up into the map. Easy. Have them simply teleport back to the spawn room red screened or down, like Quick Revive already does. Easy. Simply have them die anyway. Easy. Everyone loved PhD and lamented it not being in transit, where it should have helped town be even more fun, and to acknowledge that the players want their arguably favorite perk and spit in their face with the troll is precisely the kind of thing that's why people began preferring Blundell over Zelensky. Sure, both like to have their troll moments or whatever, but at the very least Blundell tried to not so directly spit in the face of the fans. Alright, let's talk about it. Who's who? The sole reason this category could be a 1, and now I need to defend this section against the egregious fallacy of this perk in order to justify the scoring. Primarily, the perk's main issue is the situation within which the player feels the effects of this perk. Its design is similar to Tombstone Soda, a perk idea Zelensky tried so hard to make work, yet failed again on this map. The idea is sound, sure. When you go down, you have 45 seconds, the time it takes to bleed out, to revive yourself, where you then regain all your perks and equipment, save Who's Who. The problem with this is that when you go down, you respawn near your body with base health and a 1911. There's a chance that zombies are nearby you when you spawn, instantly killing you, and there's no chance you're killing any of the zombies, so reviving yourself is almost guaranteed to fail. In addition, the perk is super buggy. If you have monkey bombs, you can lose them when you revive. You can glitch double your money in the bank because the points you have in doppelganger mode are not affected by the points of your downed character somehow. If you have both quick revive and Who's Who on solo, it will activate the doppelganger and quick revive at the same time, essentially wasting both. If all of these problems are considered, why did I keep the equipment at 2? Primarily, I think the overall quality of the rest of the equipment outshines the negative of Who's Who, instead of the inverse or it being a neutral exchange. The guns are all fantastic. The buildable can be used for some rather impressive hardcore. The wonder weapon is easily the best part of the map, and despite not having stamina up, they reintroduced Mule Kick. Who's Who drags this section down, but it's also not an irredeemable mess either. Where Tombstone you had to try and race from wherever you happened to spawn in, Who's Who at the very least places you nearby, and despite functionally being the same perk, Tombstone was multiplayer only, and Who's Who can be used in solo. I think the perk was made as poor as it was because of this solo usage, as it allows for the player to essentially have infinite downs, so long as the player either only down when a small amount of zombies could be led away to revive themselves, or accepted to reset up fully each down. Similar to Tombstone, if you didn't get yourself up in time, you simply revived as the doppelganger, resetting your perks and guns to base. While this completely sucks, it does allow for a secondary use of the perk as an escape method. If the player is cornered with tons of zombies, the player can use this perk as a means of escape, simply turning and running away the second they spawn in, accepting their reset and setting up again. The biggest issue with this is that the player is very naked and easily killed while trying to do this, and it's very points heavy to attempt. Furthermore, it's entirely possible to be screwed out of an escape simply because the elevators aren't cooperating. Despite all this, there is still the chance of a revive, instead of guaranteed death. I believe that because with all the flaws the perk is a chance at revival, however slim, means it beats a game over, even if it only delays the game over by a minute or so. Because of that chance, and because of how good the other equipment is, this section is graded as a 2. Die Rise is not fun. It's not. There are moments, but it's not an overall enjoyable experience. I can have fun messing around on it, sure. Others can have their, albeit odd, favorites. The map has an interesting design concept, but the execution leaves the map a lot to be desired. There was a reason during the height of Black Ops 2 there were never more than 1 to 200 playing this map. The concept of elevator shafts for perks and movement is great, but lacking any reliability, increasing the tediousness of traveling through the map, a problem that did not need any reinforcement. Beyond the previously mentioned problems, the map simply lacks substance. There's nothing to do. If you're playing solo, as we all are at this point, you will drastically feel how empty Die Rise feels. I believe this feeling comes from a combination of a few factors. First, simplistic design. There's no side Easter eggs or challenges, nothing besides surviving the map if you don't do the Easter egg. Beyond building the nav card table and the trample steam, all of which have the parts less than 100 feet from the actual build space, there's nothing else on the map to do. While the core principle of the game of zombies is just that, kill zombies, a truly entertaining map has enough to do that returning to the map after initial play feels invigorating and inviting. Secondly, Die Rise has a poor sense of spectacle. In every zombies map there is some sense of spectacle that sets the tone of the map. Even the simplest maps like Kino der Toten and Nacht der Untoten have an atmosphere that emphasizes a wow factor. Nacht has low fog and spawns further outside the map to make you feel like you're cornered in a bunker. Kino has the theater turn on with the power, the ceiling crumbling from the strain. Inside of Die Rise, the only spectacle put forth is the skybox, occasionally dropping meteors around, and the initial fall of the cargo elevator. During the Easter egg, there are some additional map interactions, but only for the smallest portion of the map, delegated to a single asset. Outside of this, there's little wow factor to the map. Everything in these buildings is barren. The buildings are run down, trashed, rotting. It would work as a bleak landscape for the end of the world, but without any substantial interactions or spectacle to immerse in a maze, the map falls short. Thirdly, the map's entertainment fails because there's very little reason to return to the map. Once you've played it until about round 10, you've experienced all the map has to offer. And besides the Easter egg, there's little bringing the player back into the map. The setting is interesting, but not enough to bring the player into the map on its own. The map design isn't worth the hassle and struggles in the face of so much of the map being dead zones. The Easter egg doesn't require any skill, nor is it impressive or exciting. Beyond the novelty of a nostalgia trip, what does the map bring to be able to woo the player to boot up the map? Beyond the Sliquifier, I struggle to say anything, and a wonder weapon alone isn't enough to redeem a map. Shangri-La! Overall, this gives us a score of 3 out of 10 for Die Rise. Objectively, this means the map is poorly designed overall, despite having certain strengths or unique upsides. If we were to grade this, it would classify as a failed map. It's certainly easy to see why. The verticality of the map is poorly implemented, and without PhD Flopper included in the map, it is ill-advised to make use of said verticality. Therefore, the map flow is one-directional, forcing the player to complete a loop to return to the previously left area. In addition, aesthetically, the map is quite drab and poorly designed from a visual perspective. However, these hindrances don't completely kill the map. Should you have a group of friends to play this map, or want to play casually without anything beyond slaughtering zombies with a goo gun, this map can work, even if only a little.